Yeah, again, like I was saying, I work with hardware, you know, all the time. All my creations and stuff is done with units that I work with. I work with Akai products. I got a collection of instruments and stuff that I use, man, for sound set wise and stuff, man. I like this teenage engineer thing that they got out here, man. This rhythm thing. I was on that from the time that it came out, man. And it played a perfect role, in my studio. But for what I use it for, I don't do, probably typically what everybody else uses it for. I got my own specific role that it play for me. And, that's basically what I'm talking about in general. Like everything that I have in here is put in here for a purpose. None of this is mishap. None of this is things that I just lucked up on or ran into. You know what I'm saying? Well, obviously I did luck up on and ran into it, but these were things that I intended on getting. The studio that I got right now, I handpicked everything and put it in here, based on knowledge of, things that I had worked with in the past, um, instruments that I was able to hold on to and salvage and keep together for years. And, it's a bunch of different little techniques and stuff that over the years that helped me to build my sound, because that's what I'm really into the music. Like, I had to get into this approach because working with producers and stuff, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a hands-on type of rapper, producer, whatever it is, and we working together, I'm gonna have a lot of input. And that's cool to a certain degree, man. But the type of people that do producing, man, they don't be really that open. And I get it. You gotta have a pro mindset to even produce. That's what pro mindset in producing. If you look at it like that, and it just made me realize that I need to take the time to invest into my own vision, and really be prepared to go through the process of knowing nothing and having to learn everything, because I just had ideas. You know what I'm saying? And I heard people say, man, ideas are just ideas, and it's a true statement, because I had ideas of what I wanted to do, but when I actually invested thought into it and started putting my foot to the process, it changed. You know, I got engulfed in. I was all in. You know what I'm saying? I didn't realize the rabbit hole was as deep as it was, and shit. I've been engaged in ever since. And from the very beginning, I didn't know that's what I wanted to do. I just had I had a serious thing with trying to make a tape all the time, man. And I always had relationships with DJs because they had turntables and cassette players, and it was easy to make a tape. And that's what I was obsessed with, man. I used to want to make tapes, man, where like by the time we take a ride in the car, because my partner and them, they had sounds in their car. And so, like, man, it was everything, man, to ride with the big dog, man. He got the sounds bumping, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to my dog, Butt, man, Elias Butt, Sherman, man, Johnson, man, Shrewsbury, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that nigga, he put me on game, man, as a young nigga, man, you know what I'm saying? And, but one of the things that, me and he took an interest in me in, man, was, we used to make them, I used to make tapes. And we'd ride around, and he had his sounds and shit. He used to have two big 15s in on the back seat. You know what I'm saying? And the Nova he bought from my grandpa, he put a big old 400 horsepower Trans Am motor in the in a Nova and put some 15s in the back of that motherfucker. He had that bitch running like a Mustang or some shit. That motherfucker was fast as a motherfucker, and he had nothing but sounds in it and shit. And so, you know, that was my thing, man. We get together and, you know, I go make a tape, man. And this nigga play my tape 100 times, and I get a chance to really hear how it sound and shit. And so, you know, we had a time or two, and that motivation to make a tape to ride to, you know, it stuck in my mind, man. And so, you know, basically that was the motivation for me becoming a producer, man, because it was like, you know, I wasn't in it for one beat. I wasn't in it for one song. I was in it to make a tape. And so that means multiple beats. That means different styles of beats. You know, you want to make a program. You want to have a program that, you know what I'm saying, like in my spot, to get from Harvard to cross the river, you know what I'm saying, to the lakefront, man, that's like one side of the tape. You know what I'm saying? So, like, you want to jam one side of the tape going, you want to jam another side of the tape coming back, possibly a whole nother tape. You know what I'm saying? Just to keep these niggas listening, and them niggas be listening. And, you know, along the ride, nigga get a chance to be quoting nothing but the music, you know what I'm saying? And so, nigga get the chance to be heard, man, and it meant a lot to me. You know what I'm saying? It meant so much to me, man, that I went forward and kept doing it, you know what I'm saying? Until this day, it's the motivation, you know, that keep me going, man. You know, it got me a lane of attention that I needed at that phase of my life, man. You know, I ain't had really no identity whatsoever, you know, what I wanted to be. You know, I ain't know if I wanted to be a street nigga. I ain't know if I wanted to be an athlete. I ain't know what I wanted to be, but you know, I was desperate for friends. You know what I'm saying? I needed friends, man. I clung to my neighborhood, man, you know. And that was the thing that made people pay attention to me a little bit more. My tapes, you know, I could, you know, all rapping in a circle and in the neighborhood, you know, I did all of that. But it was the difference to be able to hear yourself, man, you know what I'm saying? And like, even with me and my friends, then we sit in front of the house and shit, man, we was making tapes. And, you know, it kind of bonded us differently, man, you know what I'm saying? I made tapes all my young life, man, you know, I would have all my tapes from the past, except when I moved one time, man, I sent my tapes with a moving company, man, and they never came, man. So I lost a legacy of tapes and audio, man, you know, like, man, all kinds of shit. I mean, years of shit, man. I probably started doing that shit maybe 10, 11, young, man. You know, I was fucking just audiophile. That's what they say it is when you can't stop thinking about music or sounds or whatever. And that's what I am. I'm an audiophile, man. I grew up within blocks of a football stadium, and so you know the band used to play all the time. I could sit in my window, my bedroom window. I mean, I'm going my bathroom window, on my bedroom window, and just hit a band, man. Just sit down, and I used to actually rap to the band. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, over time, like, you know, it took me time to learn how to program my beats, like what was in my head. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was easy to emulate other people's shit. I could make beats like Dre and them or whoever it was I wanted to make a beat like, because I understood the way it was put together. You know what I mean? Like, in the beginning, when I first used to go to the studio, I had a hard time explaining, you know, what it was that I wanted to do. And so, you know, I Diamond them, you know, shout out Diamond, man. Diamond was it was like, man, he was putting me on business, like, man, listen, you don't come here and figure out what you're gonna do. You figure out what you're gonna do, then you come here and do it. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, like, him coaching me up like that, you know, because time is money, man. You know, like, I take your money, bro, but you just not the place you come here and work on your ideas. This the place you come here and put your ideas together. And so he used to school me like that, man. He schooled me like that. He put that in my head, how important it was. And so, you know, what I used to do is just go listen to records and shit, man, and make tapes break beats and shit, man. You know what I'm saying? Just a part of the record that's good enough to rap on. So next time when I see him, I got something for him to listen to. And that's how, you know, I got into the part of, you know, being selective about my beats and my sounds and shit like that. Like, you know, I started identifying with different records and different beats and different genres of music, you know, because it mainly it wasn't rap. It wasn't rap. I never really sampled rap before in my life. Like, it was always another genre that had that vibe to it. And, you know, that's what I'm into it for, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that's one of the main reasons, like, at this phase of my career, I don't do a lot of sampling. I sample, but I don't sample cordially, like chop samples and, you know, stuff like that. I use phrase samples, if that make any clarity to you. You know, I do sample, but I won't sample uh, seconds of a record, like, hardly ever. Like, man, you know, if I loop it, you know, I won't really program nothing to it or whatever it is. Like, it'll have to be something that was just laid out like that. But I'm saying that to say that, you know, synthesizers, you know, is the fill-in for all of the samples. Like, if you got a synthesizer or you understand what a synthesizer is, like, you could do everything you're sampling in less time. So, you know, that dawned on me, and I lost the love for the sampling, because I like the instrument itself, you know, and I like to create those stacks and layers myself, man. And so, you know, like, once I got onto that phase of making music, man, you know, like, I felt more complete as a producer, man, because, you know, like, making beats and producing is two different things. Like, you know, a beat is a beat until you start writing to it and recording to it. And, you know, at that phase, then you producing. You know, once you arrange and structure and scenes within your songs, you know, that's what producing is about, arranging the scene, the song structure. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I do. You know, I put scenes, collaborative scenes together, and with a metronome, a DJ metronome in my brain, I blend out of a pool of samples that I chose to blend with, and I build that way rather than just sampling something and relying on one source or whatever it is. Like, I sample from a pool of samples. So it's different. Like, you know, I contain these pools of samples, and it's like a mixture of blending and DJing, like, in one. But, you know, it's like time stretching and creating vibes out of structures and pieces and particles of a sample, rather than chopping the sample and lengthening it. And it's just a different technique that appease my style more. You know, everybody have a different way of approaching it. And like I said, so between the two of them and the ability of the transitions of a song, going from one song to the next, beginning one song, ending another song, just those transitional periods and stuff like that, man. I always like to inject samples, sound effects, so forth and so on into those things. And that's what I spend a lot of my time, you know, doing. And man, I'd be amazed at how it turned out. You know, things that I had a vision, I thought it would go this way, but then this went, it fit with it, and I call it seamless integration. And basically, I'm explaining my process of what intrigued me about what I do. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, you know, I'm ecstatic that I get a chance to do these things in reality, man, because, you know, this is the way my brain works. You know, I have a good memory, and so when I'm sitting down listening to shit, from the time I hear it, it stay in my brain, and so it start blending itself and mixing itself together in my brain. And so that's what I'm saying. What I do now is I collect those ideas and set them up where I could put a handle on them, and then I paint pictures with sounds that I see in my head. You see what I'm saying? Sounds that I see in my head. You see how that sound? It sound oxymoronic, and that's what music is. You know, it's an oxymoronic life. You know what I mean? You know, what don't make sense makes sense sometimes. You know, the main thing about music for me, man, you know, I tried to make it into a team sport, and you know, is if you go through the history of music, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, people don't stick together long. There's hardly no crews, because you know, one person there for one reason and another person there for another reason, and them ideas eventually clash one way or the other. So you know, it always be a leadership and a guidance thing for the individual. Who is the real leader? Who's the, you know, the self-efficient one, or the one that have the greater level of experience in a situation? And you know, like, those are the people that usually emerge as the solo artists, or you know, the people that have visionary plans, you know, to lead the whole camp for themselves, or you know, whatever. And it turned to that way, man, because it's like, there's only so many people, man, that really have the patience and endurance to deal with something like this, because this is a lifetime level of understanding. You know, at my age, I've been doing this since I was a teenager, 16, 17 years old, you know, actually recording and stuff like that, you know, on a professional level. You know, the ins and outs of, you know, just being a composer, you know, being able to, you know, orchestrate putting everything together for myself. You know, that was, I didn't have no guidance. It just was common sense, and being in the right place at the right time for us, for information, people being able to expose me to opportunities. It gave me opportunities, you know, to do what I was doing. So like when I'm saying 16, 17 years old, man, I found myself in a situation where I was actually in studios recording records, you know, records that actually, you know, made it to the streets. And yeah, beautiful thing, man, for me, you know. So I just be, you know, 100% music, man. You know, I just felt like my journey might be something that somebody could understand, learn from. You know, I'm a myth. You know, you know, I exist but don't exist. You know, especially in this the craft of music that I make, man. You know, people listen to how I sound, and how, you know, the vibe of the music. You know what I'm saying? It sound like a nigga, a super wild nigga. You know, super gangster nigga. This, that, and other. You know what I'm saying? And you know, that's part true, far as, you know, the feeling of it, the operation of it, the way nigga carry themselves day to day, you know, the objectory, the image of it, you know. But it's not really an image. It's a realistic approach. Like, it's lined up with my real life, my real character, who I am, how I am. And you know, you get to see it from a different side, a different point of view. But at the same time, you know, I'm intelligent. You know, it's hard to entertain and be a person. You know, like, people don't, you know, all rappers have different names. You know, you say the rapper and then you say his real name. Well, you know, that's my real name, and my name Ryan Gray. And I purposely did that because what you hear from me, you know, is my life, my lifestyle, my life experiences, and my music. And everybody say that. But I mean, you know, to a degree, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying nothing that's irregular to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's the part of letting you hear it, because I'm a different type character. You know, I would say, you know, unique. Everybody's unique. You know, to the point where, you know, nobody's identical. But my path to being me and my life story is unique in the aspect of what I am and how I am. You know, I've been advanced since the beginning. Like I understood what I'm explaining before I even was qualified to be in the situation. So it's just what I'm saying. It's like it's one of these conversations, like that you sound like we saying oxymoronic shit, but it's real shit in the terms of how it applied to real life. And so that's the difference in what I'm talking about. Who I am, Ryan Gray. So it ain't many niggas that I ever knew that could entertain themselves with their own life. But that's what I do. I entertain with my real life, and I have a life worth celebrating. It's a life full of over what it is. What God said, you overcomer. I'm an overcomer. Yeah, I overcame a lot to be in this position, man. And so, when I tell my little stories and it's coming from a genuine place, a person that don't take the time to fabricate nothing. Everything is real life. And, when people say real, and I say the streets and this is that and other, they try to associate it with all of the negativity. You know what I'm saying? That's why, it's negativity. You a nigga, so it got to be negative. You know what I mean? That's the mindset, And that's the next record company. Negativity. You know what I'm saying? Every phase need a new record company. Negativity music. Yeah. Be looking for that. Yeah. I don't know who's gonna disagree with what I'm saying, but this real shit. You know what I'm saying? Negativity. But yeah, it gotta be negative all the time, and I ain't a negative nigga. I'm a real dude, man. Very very gravitated, down to earth, everyday understanding, everyday morality. You know, in the best way, because I didn't want to serve that bullshit up as a person. I'm a person, man, and it's very hard to be entertaining with your true life. It's very hard to be uplifted in your true life without being depressed, and it's a process to that, and that's the process that I share in my music. The overcoming spirit, the resiliency of taking losses or setbacks, or being patient, with the plan, with my gifts and shit like that, man. Like people wouldn't imagine, the decision making that come, with my position, for us for me choosing against myself, me choosing to work with myself, me choosing to keep faith and longevity. Like I never fumbled the rock. I've been, my hands been around the fire the entire time, and that's what I say. When people try to levelize, my life or my, what they consider accomplishments or non thereof, what I'm saying, is my accomplishment to me. The biggest accomplishment that I'm most proud of and thankful is the longevity of it. Being able to still be doing what I love, man, from a kid. Like, I made space in my life to fit what meant something to me, being able to write and create and build and do the things that I do with my time. It mean a lot to me. And that's the thing that I'm most proud about, man. At this age of my life, man, I'm still fascinated and entertained and still being highly educated, man. And that's what I say, man. Through music, I live a ruled, educated, aligned life. I don't have no qualifications, doctrinations, none of those things. But I communicate on a world-class level. And that didn't come from just sitting around playing with my thumbs. When actually, I am playing with my thumbs, but it took more than just me playing drum machines and music. to get to this level of clarity where I'm able to put things in a proper perspective, man, where I could relate it and, make it, digestible to the next person. You know, that's what I've been doing with my time, with my life, man. And I don't feel like I wasted a second. I felt like I was right on point, to be in a position where what I know is important to the world, because it was other things that I learned that's not even important no more in life after living long enough. What we learned in the 80s and 90s is irrelevant now. But I was involved with something in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s that's real popular now. And so, like, if you would, I have a lifelong education in what I'm doing. Like, man, I've never done nothing different, and it's never been more important than it is now. So, I see it, man. The whole music structure system has fallen, and it's left to the people who know how to restructure it because they know the old way. But the old way is shattered itself because of, underpaying and underappreciating the labor and the love of the real music community, the people that's gifted. They don't want people that play music to make the money off the music. There's so many businesses involved in making the money off of the actual performer and the star or the artist, whatever you want to call it. The producer. That's the way the music business is designed. And I understand because it can't process itself. But at the end of the day, if anybody's ever able to put themselves in a position to construct it around their self, wow, what kind of outcome would that make? We have yet to see. So again, man, you know what I'm saying? It's just me sharing my point of view. Ryan Great, 100% music. You know what I'm saying? Be looking out for the next episode coming. One Thigh Wild, baby.
Hey, mic check, 1 2 1 2. What it do, nigga? Yeah. Who that nigga out the cut in the light of broad day?